The first, not the first book, but the first anthology of Howard's material was the Skull Face and Others, which is pretty good, even if Derleth didn't like Conan. And it begins with an excellent poem, which is called "Which Will Scarcely Be Understood," and closes with lines written in the realization that I must die. And, oh, I did want to mention, as I'm sure many of you are aware who have studied poetry in school, most poets today have taken advantage of Walt Whitman's prosodic innovations, free verse, free form. At its best, given the poet, it can work very well, and I understand why he did that. He wanted to create a new language of poetry which reflected a different experience from that of Europe. But as you know, we never are completely rid of our beginnings, including our parents, and why would we want to be? It's just strange that the 3 or 4 principal writers for Weird Tales all happened to have been born in the late 1800s. And they were very well acquainted with, of course, the whole tradition of poetry, at least from Chaucer and Spenser onward. Some also were acquainted with Beowulf, which they might have read in translation. But if any of you have heard Benjamin Bagley's wonderful DVD, which has subtitles, he has it absolutely down, the first 1,062 lines of Beowulf, and he accompanies it with an Anglo-Saxon harp, which is really a kind of a lyre with metal strings, which are very resonant. When you hear that, you realize that Old English is a foreign language. It's closer actually to Scandinavian, also to that language they still speak in the northern part of Holland, Friesland. There's actually a language still like that. It's also close to Danish, Norwegian, Sweden. And every now and then when you're listening, and they have these subtitles very well translated as it goes along, you hear something like elsewhere. Oh, that's elsewhere. But the language has changed tremendously. And for you who have studied English, you know modern English is medieval French, or a great deal of it. So there's a lot behind our language. And when a poet learns how to write in this language well, more than well, that's an achievement, which will scarcely be understood. Small poets sing of little foolish things as more befitting to a shallow brain that dreams not of the pre-Atlantean kings, nor launches on that dark, uncharted main that holds grim islands and unholy tides, where many a black, mysterious secret hides. True rhyme concerns her not with bursting buds, the chirping bird, the lifting of the rose, save ebon blooms that swell in ghastly woods, and that grim voiceless bird that ever broods, where through black boughs a wind of horror blows. O little singers, what know you of those ungodly, slimy shapes that glide and crawl out of unreckoned gulfs when midnights fall to haunt the poet's slumbering, and close against his eyes thrust up their hissing head and mock him with their eyes so serpent red? Conceived and bred in blackened pits of hell, the poems come that set the stars on fire. Born of black maggots writhing in a shell, men call a poet's skull an iron bell filled up with burning mist and golden mire. The royal purple is a moldy shroud. The laurel crown is cypress fixed with thorns. The sword of fame, a sickle notched and dull. The face of beauty is a grinning skull. And ever in their souls' red caverns, loud the rattle of the cloven hooves and horns. The poets know that justice is a lie, that good and light are bubbles filled with dust. The world's slave market, where swine sell and buy, this shambles where the howling cattle die, has blinded not their eyes with lies and lust. Ring up the demons from the lower pit, Since evil conquers goodness in the end, break down the door and let the fires be lit, and greet each slavering monster as a friend. Let obscene shapes of darkness ride the earth. Let sacrificial smoke blot out the skies. Let dying virgins glut the black god's eyes, and all the world resound with noisome mirth. Break down the altars, let the streets run red, tramp down the race into the crawling slime. Then, where red chaos lifts her serpent head, the fiend be praised, we'll pen the perfect rhyme. This particular poem absolutely captures the glory and the futility of combat, in a sense. The King and the Oak. Before the shadows slew the sun, the kites were soaring free, and Kull rode down the forest road, his red sword at his knee. And the winds were whispering round the world, King Kull rides to the sea. The sun dyed crimson in the sea, the long grey shadows fell. The moon rose like a silver skull that wrought a demon's spell. For in its light great trees stood up like spectres out of hell. In spectral light the trees stood up, inhuman monsters dim. Kull thought each trunk a living shape, each branch a knotted limb. In strange, unmortal, evil eyes flamed horribly at him. The branches writhed like knotted snakes, they beat against the night, and one great oak with swayings stiff, horrific in his sight, tore up its roots and blocked his way, grim in the ghostly light. They grappled in the forest way, the king and grisly oak. Its great limbs bent him in their grip, but never a word was spoke. And futile in his iron hand, the stabbing dagger broke. And through the tossing monstrous trees, there sang a dim refrain, fraught deep with twice a million years of evil, hate, and pain. We were the lords ere man had come, and shall be lords again. Kull sensed an empire strange and old that bowed to man's advance, as kingdoms of the grass blades bow before the marching ants, and horror gripped him in the dawn like someone in a trance. He strove with bloody hands against a still and silent tree. As from a nightmare dream he woke, a wind blew down the lea, and Kull of high Atlantis rode silent to the sea. A silver scroll against a marble sky, a brooding idol hewn of crimson stone, a dying queen upon an ebon throne, an iron bird that rends the clouds on high. A golden lute whose echoes never die, 1,000 dreams that men have never known, spread mighty wings and fold me when alone. Upon my couch, in haunted sleep, I lie. I remember. Then, rending mists, the spurring whisper comes, wake, dreamer, wake, your tryst with life to keep. Yet, waking, still a throb of phantom drums comes hauntingly across the mystic deep. Their echo still my thrilling soul chord thrums. Which is the waking then, and which the sleep?